To learn more about domestic travel plans for the upcoming summer holiday across Southeast Asia, we are now connected to Stephen Tracy, the Chief Operating Officer of Milieu Insight, who recently conducted a study about this. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us right here on the 3 Hours News Show. We're saying hi right here from Jakarta.
Hello.
And we know that you wish that you were in Bali just like me and Aaliyah.
That's right.
Right?
I do indeed. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here with us. All right, so let's talk about this. How willing are Southeast Asians to travel domestically for vacation, especially, summer days are coming, summer holidays for school is also coming up.
Yeah, so willingness is really high right now. So we did a poll of more than 5,000 consumers across Southeast Asia, including countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, etc. And we asked them questions around their interest in traveling, what kind of trips they want to take. And the first thing we found is that willingness to travel domestically right now is really high. It's particularly high in countries like Indonesia and Philippines. So I think that speaks to the fact that, there's a lot of space in countries in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of beautiful places you can visit. And while some people may not be ready yet for international travel, turning to domestic travel to kind of get their travel to kind of get it out of their system and take their first trips.
All right, what about the concerns? We know that Indonesian travelers, they really want to travel, but then there are concerns as travel opens amid the easing of travel restrictions vis-a-vis other countries.
Yeah, so concern levels vary a lot by country. You find that about half of the population in Indonesia that we interviewed said that they still have safety concerns related to COVID. That was actually a lot in some of the other countries. When you compare it to the Philippines and Vietnam, their concern levels were a lot higher. So there are concern levels, but they seem to be waning a bit in terms of COVID-19 related concerns. But the thing is, it's not just about COVID right now. You do have other issues that seem to be popping up, like the spread of monkeypox, and even in Indonesia, hand, foot, mouth. But overall, I think that people are cautiously optimistic, and those concerns are not going to stop them from traveling.
And Stephen,
most people.
Yeah, and I think most people, especially right here in Indonesia or Southeast Asian, people or countries, I think the people are ready to still following the health protocols.
Yes.
Even though it's not mandatory by any countries, right? They know how to wear their mask, washing their hands and, watching their distance and whatnot. But I think especially the Indonesians, they're ready to travel. I mean, there's a lot of, our friends that travel even during the pandemic, but just coming back to Indonesia because of the quarantine time, I think they were reluctant to go. Now, Stephen, on this, what are the key highlights in terms of travel habits and preference or references of domestic travelers that right now?
Well, again, we noticed that there was a lot of differences between the countries. So when we asked them what kind of vacation do you want to go on, the most common types of trips people want to take were like foodie vacations where they can go and engage in culture and food.
Right.
We saw a lot of people saying they wanted relaxing vacations. They just want to be able to go and sit on a beach and relax. In Indonesia, we found that people wanted to do sightseeing types of trips and to be able to see scenery and see the sights and in some cases do more adventurous things compared to other countries.
We're also wanting to know the popular destinations. I mean, here domestically in Indonesia, for travelers in Indonesia as well, we have Bali, and maybe you can mention others as well that people are, can't wait to go to, and perhaps also destinations in other countries.
Yeah, so when we asked the top destinations, Bali was on the top of the list. Now the second, third, and fourth options were fairly spread out across the country. So you had, and forgive me for the pronunciation, but Yogyakarta was ranked second in terms of the top travel destination. And then you also had places like Labuan Bajo and Raja Ampat also ranking very high for top domestic destinations.
All right. And also, Stephen, from your data also and from your research, people are likely, especially Indonesian, are they likely to go bound, for their holidays by air? Is it, by their car? Because I remember especially during the pandemic, people would travel, just use their personal transportation or their cars as opposed to, by air or maybe by trains. What's your research on this?
So we asked, their preference to travel by land, air, sea, and And by land and by car or bus was the number one option. I think that kind of makes sense because, you know, it may even be more accessible for people to use a bus or a car to get to a lot of these places. Domestic airfare or traveling by air was also fairly high. About 40% said that they were interested or likely to travel by air, but it was mainly by land.
Yeah, so how do you see like the forecast, if you would say that, tourism will be back as usual,
Yes.
business as usual? When is it going to happen?
If things keep going the way that they're going now in terms of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic is under control, the vaccines we have seem to be working well with the current variants, and you don't have any big issues with these new things that are coming up like monkeypox, I think that the travel industry, the latter half of this year is going to be a big year. There's already signs of sold out flights. Costs of flights are going up because there's a huge demand, which hopefully those will come back down. In Singapore, you have this issue where it's taking people 6 weeks to get a passport, and they are queuing up for 4 hours. And so there's a lot of demand and interest to travel. And so the travel industry is definitely bouncing back. And if things, I think, keep going the way they have been, the second half this year will be very good. And next year could be back to the pre-pandemic levels.
And also we saw a lot of travel agencies or travel platforms having a lot of promos and packages. Exactly. Travel fair is back, by the way, so it's so good to go. Now, how likely are, unlikely for people to use travel agency service for their domestic travel and vacation plans, Stephen?
Very, very high. So we asked them how they would book their trips, and we saw a very high proportion of people saying that they would use travel agencies. I think people do want convenience. Travel is very tricky. There's a lot of logistics that you have to plan, and I think a lot of people do like the idea of outsourcing that pain to travel agencies. There is still a lot of people that will kind of DIY it themselves and piece together their itineraries using different platforms. One thing that was interesting during is that a lot of the travel portals that you saw, like Airbnb and other similar sites, had to pivot to experiences. And they're actually able to leverage those new offerings and bundle them really well with just booking hotels or stays and things like that. So it means that they may not necessarily have to go to the traditional travel agency, although those are going to do really well, I think, this year. But people are also turning to platforms like those travel portals because they're actually really good now at bundling those experiences with accommodations and airfare.
Stephen and Ali, I just want to share with you guys, during the pandemic, me and my family, we did travel to Bali. And because there are so many, it was just locals because there's no foreigners can allowed to come into Bali. Those luxurious hotels cut down half of the price of their rooms, correct? And now when I call them back, they're like, oops, sorry, Bali is open. I'm like, okay.
They'd probably even, make it even more expensive than
exactly. How's your take on this, Stephen? It seems that the numbers are just climbing way more than previously before the pandemic.
Yeah, prices are going to go up for a while. You've already seeing it in airfare, and I think you're definitely seeing like a bounce back in terms of accommodations, because now the question is, are they going to be higher than the pre-pandemic levels? And if they are they going to stay there? I think that there's going to be a bit of a painful period where there's just such high demand right now that prices are going to be a little bit higher for a while. I do think that they're going to go back down, and hopefully towards the end of the year or maybe early into next year.
Harvesting time for the travel industry, indeed. Thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing that with us. We do really appreciate it, and hopefully we can travel really soon. We'll come to Bali anytime.
Thanks so much.
Thank
you.